case. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Glory to Jesus Christ. So the reading for the feast, which is said both on the feast day and on its leave-taking, which today is the leave-taking of the Dormition, in translation, otherwise known as Assumption of the Mother of God. And that reading is, now it happened as they went, and he entered a certain village, and a certain woman named Martha came, welcomed him into her house. She had a sister named Mary, who also sat at Jesus' feet and heard his word. But Martha was distracted with much serving, and she approached him and said, "Lord, do you not care that my sister has left me to serve alone? Therefore, tell her to help me." And Jesus answered and said unto her, "Martha, Martha, you are worried and troubled about many things, but one thing is needed, and Mary has chosen that good part, which will not be taken from her." And you know, it was years ago, and I was shuffling through patristic commentaries to find out what the Father said about the one thing needful. And interestingly enough, the Father just pointed to basically the fact about our reading today. It's actually a composite reading because it skips ahead by several verses. And it's that the second part, the end part, that actually gives us the answer about what the one thing needful is. And you know, I don't know if any of you remember either the book or the movie Needful Things by Stephen King. By the way, Stephen King lives right down the coast here. But Needful Things was about all these people who had all these desires and they felt like they needed certain things, right? And the devil was leading them to go after whatever they wanted, whatever they wound up thinking they needed. But as Jesus says, there's only one thing needful. Now Martha's like, "Come on, my sister's being a lazy bum, right? Tell her to help me." Jesus says, "Really? She's sitting here listening to my words. You're worried about this and that and the other thing. But a fancy dinner, Martha," even though Martha wanted the fancy dinner, right? That's why she was so fussed up. It was a very fancy dinner, and it was her who made it fancy. Jesus didn't expect it to be fancy or anything else. And he's like, "Look, you've got a lot of things that you're worried about. But Mary's the one worried about the one thing that's needful for everybody." So what was that one thing needful in it? It's at the end of the reading. And it happened, he spoke these things. As he spoke these things, a certain woman from the company raised her voice and said unto him, "Blessed is the womb that bore you and the breast which nursed you." And he said, "Yes, more than that. Blessed are those who hear the word of God and keep it." The one thing needful is for us to hear the word of God and to keep it. That's the one thing needful in life. So how are we doing on that? I'm going to ask you a question. True or false? Human nature is basically good. It's a trick question. Human nature was created good, right? But we had a fall. And so our corrupted human nature. No, people are not by default inclined towards the good. And we see that with little kids, right? One bites another one's hand, one slaps another one, selfish, they keep the toys, right? They tell on each other to get each other in trouble. I mean, come on. From the time we're this big, we're inclined towards mischief. And in any case, that's the fall. That's the story of the Bible, right? Is that human nature had a fall. And it's only by Christ that we're given that power to lift back up and to live a life of good. And we see the example of that, you know, right now. So we don't see a lot on the news. You know, John was just telling me They stormed down the gates at the county jail, and it didn't even make the news. Not even the local news. There's lots of stuff happening by that. This past week, there was 3 people in purge masks, and as it was coming across the air, I was going back and forth listening to the radio, but as it came across the air, I didn't catch where it happened, but 3 people in purge masks, if you've seen the movie The Purge, or even know about it, went and burned down a house in the middle of the night with a full family and 3 children living in it. And they all died. And there's things like this going on all over the place. And if we look at other countries, so I think we've taken for granted, we've taken human nature is basically good. The reason why we think that is because we live in a Christian civilization, or we did until recently. Right? If you go across the world, people treat each other terribly. Especially in non-Christian nations. It's just a fact. And go back through history. Wherever Christ was not, bad stuff reigned. Not just back in the days of Noah, but other times. It was hideous. Back in the old days, women in the Roman Empire, this was civilized. If you didn't like if your baby was too colicky, you set it outside for the night, you came back in the morning, you dug a ditch, and you put it in it. No one arrested you. That was life without Christ, before Christ came to the Roman Empire. Unfortunately, we seem to be moving back towards that today, and that's because we culturally have left Christ behind. We took for granted Christian civilization, which was what made us safe and prosperous, was what made us good and kind. And now we see as people distance themselves from Christ, there's less than kindness going on out there. Right? Only 17% of all people in the United States are churchgoers anymore. Rather than the 1950s, were 90-some%. So we think back, into the classics, right? Mephistopheles. One of the quotes from Mephistopheles was, "Everything that exists deserves to perish." That's what the devil does feel. And now we have people who feel the same way. They're burning, looting in the streets, burning buildings down. We had that bomb over in Lebanon, but some of the United States looks worse. Because it actually has people destroying it. Rather than a bomb that destroyed everything else, people are destroying one another. I don't know if you saw some of that video of people out in the street, innocent people getting really badly injured. I just won't go into detail about it, but it's disgusting. And that's because nihilism has taken over. Nihilism, or nihilism, means destruction. They don't believe in that life has meaning or worth. They don't believe that there are any ultimate moral values. Does this sound familiar? Nihilism is taking the day. It's valuing destruction versus valuing the building up in the human person, the meaning to each human's lives. And nihilism can be found in ancient times, and it does go back to what I spoke about a few months ago, in that view of the ends justify as the means, which was the horrible Niccolo Machiavelli, right? So from where we get Machiavellianism, the ends justifies the means, which actually came from ancient time, from Ovid's Heroines, right, where he said the outcome justifies the deeds. And right now, that's what we have, right? All of a sudden, it's okay to lie, just so long as our supposedly good outcome comes out of it. It's okay to let people rob stores, take them over, burn down neighborhoods because they're just venting. Wow. this is, by the Machiavelli was not a good person. For anyone who doesn't know about Machiavelli, he was really not a great person. And it so Machiavelli's vision and this other vision resulted in a political system of deceit. It employed corruption, but ultimately leads to a good end. And this sounds familiar to us. It should sound familiar to us. The Soviet Union, Communist China, and the Nazi regime all upheld the same view. All of them. Killing over 100 million people combined over their reigns of terror. Which, by the way, their combined killing was more than all of the other genocidal numbers prior to the 20th century from the time of Christ. Think about that. The number of just those three atheist regimes murdering people, mass genocide, outnumbered all of the people who were killed from the time of Christ to just the beginning of the 20th century. Evil took the day. And evil took the day because the culture started buying into it, right? The good end, an ideal society, and letting go of corruption. But ultimately, today we learn that we cannot have a good society, a good culture, unless we have that one thing needful. And that one thing needful is for us to hear the Word of God and to do it. That is what makes a good culture, a good civilization. And that starts first at our homes, goes out with us to our work, to the stores, goes out with us to the church. It goes out with us to the roads, the highways, the byways. It goes out with us when you're out just trying to do something out front and someone throws a beer can out the window and it hits you. And that has happened to me, by the way. Years ago, I was out mowing the lawn out front and someone threw a beer can out the window and hit me. Empty, but still. It's a good thing it wasn't full. I mean, I'm thankful to God for that. But, so, I must say I wasn't very pleased. But if we're to love our enemies, that's one of the tougher situations. But so what do? We be the gospel and we do the gospel for others. And see how many it picks up. It does make a difference in people's lives sometimes. It could be having misery, and I know it's hard for many of us maybe to comprehend because we're all church-going, we show love to other people. But there's a lot of people who haven't been shown kindness in a long time, and you might be the only act of kindness that they're shown, or act of patience on maybe one of their most terrible days. Maybe their spouse left them, maybe they're fired from their job, maybe laid off and then they were never able to come. Who knows? Maybe they lost a child and they're miserable that day because of that. Maybe it's time to do